Hello, UCLA Radio. This is Dr. No, and this is my interview with John Densmore.
Hello?
Hello, Mr. Densmore.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm calling for the UCLA Radio interview.
Yeah.
All right. First off, I want to thank you very much for coming on. It's quite an honor to have you on, and I just want to talk about your book. Well, I'm going to start off with your book, and I got to say, as a longtime fan of the Doors, I've got to say that your book was shocking. I knew little of the tension between you and Ray Manzarek and Robbie Krieger beforehand. When you first undertook this project, were you apprehensive about it?
Totally. Are you taping this and then going to cut it together later? Or?
Yes.
Okay. Suing my musical brothers. I mean, I thought I was crazy, but I also thought Jim is irreplaceable, and I had to do it.
I see. Yeah, and you state that very clearly in the book that you felt you had to stand up for Jim when most other people, when nobody else would, and I thought that was a pretty noble stance on your part. It's just like.
Thanks.
Yeah, and it focuses on the 2003 judicial proceedings between you and the surviving members of the Doors. Would you like to fill in our listeners about the subject of the hearing and the events that led up to it?
They were going to play a concert, and my ears were bothering me, and so I said, go ahead. And then they booked an entire tour, and I said, wait a minute, you got to change the name. I mean, come on, the Doors without Jim, the Stones without Mick, this is ludicrous. And they kind of fudged a little and put the Doors, and then of the 20th century, real small. So nobody read it. So I had to rally Jim's estate, and we had to enter a legal struggle.
I see. And what's it called? I'm sure when you guys first started playing, you never saw yourself joining forces with Jim's family against Ray Manzarek and Robbie Krieger, right?
Yeah, and that was an incredible blessing I never saw coming, because I never met Jim's dad, because Jim, in the 60s, the Vietnam War was raging, and Jim's dad was an admiral in the Gulf of Tonkin, commanding battleships. And we wrote The Unknown Soldier against that war. So he said his parents were deceased in his original bio. He was so angry. And then at 86 years old, his dad comes around to protect his son's legacy. It was incredible. A great healing.
Yeah, that is very incredible. That is just I had no idea about any of that. I would never expect that to happen. Yeah. So the Doors Unhinged, like I said, focuses on the hearing, but it also touches upon the band's past, as well as political issues. And were there any political issues or events from the Doors' history that you want to discuss but didn't end up making it into the final book?
No. I mean, I have to admit that we are sort of left-leaning. I'll have to say that. Other than that, Jim thought that you need to change inside, and then the outside will change.
I see. Yeah, and your own personal politics became a subject of the trial, and that was especially surprising, because I had always assumed you guys were all on the same page politically, and so.
Yeah, I just said we were left-leaning, but I didn't know I was an anarchistic communist, commie pinko Al-Qaeda supporter. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I did not know that either.
So that's the mud they threw at me, trying to make me look bad, which was shocking.
Yeah, I'm just surprised that the prosecution tried that against you. I was really shocked that they would try that in a court of law for everybody to see, and just do you know if to your knowledge were there any repercussions against them? Because it seems like libel basically.
It's very hard to prove libel in court.
I see.
So it's the people on the witness stand that are swearing to tell the truth. The lawyers can just throw any dirt at you they want.
Oh wow, it's crazy. And well, a major point of that litigation was your veto of a deal with Cadillac allowing them to use "Light My Fire" in a commercial, and you argued that you were doing that because at that point the Doors members were already pretty well off, and that to do so would only cheapen the music. However, you said if a starting up band did that, you would be okay with it because they would probably need the exposure, you know. And it's interesting because I've talked to other musicians and they've argued the opposite, that if they were to do that, they would become typecast as the band with that song in the commercial. How would you care to offer a counter to that argument?
Well, all what you just said is true, but the bottom line is that Jim got very upset. I'm pleased that the first sentence of my book is "fuck you," because Jim said that to us about considering using "Come On Buick, Light My Fire," and he didn't even write that song. I mean, primarily Robbie wrote it, and so that means that he cared about all the songs and what we represented. And since he passed, I thought I have to uphold what my ancestor wanted. He's not around. And so that's the basis of all that.
I see.
But it's unique to our situation.
Oh, okay. I understand then. Yeah. And, well, you've also written one other book, your autobiography, Riders on the Storm, which came out in 1990. What differences were there between the content and circumstances in which that book and The Doors Unhinged were written?
Well, it's kind of embarrassing to have not one but two self-centered memoirs, but I had to write them both. I mean, the first one was about my struggles with Jim's alcoholism and being in a great artistic group. And the second one was, that what we represented was getting distorted, and I had to do something about it. So that's why there was a second one.
I see. So the circumstances in which you wrote The Doors Unhinged were more unpleasant than in Riders on the Storm, right?
Were more what?
Unpleasant.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
They were more unpleasant, the circumstances?
Unpleasant. Yeah, but, I tried to write Unhinged with humor. I'm sitting in the courtroom bored to death, and so I do my inner dialogue, and hopefully there's amusement there as I make fun of all the proceedings. And I also write about playing with Eddie Vedder and Carlos Santana, just to give it more balance than just a courtroom drama.
Yeah, well, you did. I would say you did a pretty good job of that, tying in the Doors' history and political issues, so it's not just like a dry legal drama, So I thought that was good. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome. Yeah. And, well, what's really hard to accept in the book is the strain that the legal disputes caused between you and your former bandmates. And that being said, you include in the text a letter you wrote to Ray Manzarek and Robbie Krieger that attempted to reconcile your differences with them. And Ray Manzarek passed away last year, unfortunately. But has Krieger attempted to reciprocate your sentiments?
Yeah, well, let me say that that letter was contained in the last chapter, which I sent to Ray and Robbie before the book was published, with a note saying, this book will probably be tough to read, but I want to make sure you get to this chapter where I say you're my musical brothers, how can I not love you guys? And then when I heard Ray was getting real sick, I called him, and we had a closing phone call, thank God, and then when he passed, I called Robbie and said, can we honor Ray and play a concert in his, tribute to him and a benefit for cancer? So we're still trying to get that together.
Oh, okay, good. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
And that's interesting that about the strain between you guys, and you compare it to a strain between brothers because you guys were so intimate with each other in being in the Doors, and it kind of reminds me of the struggle for you to help Jim get out of alcoholism and drug addiction, and you were early on, you were concerned about that, and it hurt you to see Jim like that because he was like a brother to you.
Yeah, but back then we didn't know he had a disease called alcoholism.
Oh, wow.
And we didn't have substance abuse clinics. We didn't, I knew something was wrong, but I was young, and there wasn't all these institutions that help you with these problems like there are today.
So you weren't able to quite put two and two together. You just had a vague idea of what was going on.
Yeah. He knew I disapproved, but I didn't know what to do about it except get us off the road because we were so good live, and then it started getting eroded due to his drinking.
I see. Yeah, and so are you against like recreational drug use then, or are you just against it taking excess?
No, Jim was always an example of going too far, so I just was careful. But I dabble.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, there's two kinds of people: those who have addictive genes who can't dabble at all, and then people like me who are lucky to be able to take the edge off by having a little recreational drink or smoke. So it's good to find out who you are and then act accordingly.
That's true. That's very good advice, I would say. Yeah. Well, a year after you wrote Riders on the Storm, Oliver Stone's The Doors was released to theaters. You served as a consultant on that film. Can you tell us about that experience?
I like the movie. It's a 6-year career crammed into 2 hours, so it's an impressionistic painting of what happened. It's not totally accurate, but I thought Val Kilmer was fantastic. And I was pleased that a documentary was made called When You're Strange with Johnny Depp narrating, which was a little more about the 60s and the time period, which I felt that's what was lacking in Oliver's movie. But Oliver's movie was primarily about self-destruction and artistic endeavors.
I see. And you got to work with the actor who portrayed you, Kevin Dillon, and what was working with him like? Did you speak to him extensively or what? Anything like that?
It was fine. I was just trying to get him to relax because I was pretty relaxed playing my drums because I had done it for years. And then as Jim's self-destruction increased, I got tense. And Kevin was kind of tense in the beginning because he was worried about, portraying me and whatever. And then he got more relaxed as he got used to it, which was the reverse of what happened in real life.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Well, like you said, you liked the film, but Ray Manzarek did not like it that much. He notoriously fell out with Oliver Stone over it. Why do you believe that he felt that way and just ended up reacting so violently towards it?
Well, Ray went to film school, and he wanted to direct the Doors movie, but you can't get millions of dollars in a budget with a student resume. And also, he kind of didn't want any of Jim's dark tendencies portrayed. He wanted it to be sort of all the good stuff. And so Oliver certainly put in all the craziness, so that's why Ray didn't like it.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, growing up, you played piano and percussion in a marching band, and you studied jazz and ethnic music before playing rock in the Doors. When did you first transition from like jazz and like ethnic music to rock? When did that happen?
Well, probably I saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, and I thought, wow, this is interesting. I mean, I knew about Elvis and Chuck Berry and Little Richard, but I loved jazz. I was kind of a snob. And then the Beatles and the Rolling Stones made me think, wow, this would be a way to go.
All right, well, which Doors songs do you think are the most significant?
Oh, boy. Well, I love Riders on the Storm album, or L.A. Woman album, Riders. I suppose Riders is really important, and L.A. Woman, and certainly Light My Fire in the End, and when the Music's Over, and all the rest of the songs on all the albums.
Yeah, I really think the soft parade it's very interesting to me just because what's it called it has unlike the earlier Doors albums has like string and brass in it. I don't know. I thought that was very interesting to hear.
Yeah, we were trying to make Sergeant Pepper. We were very impressed by that
Oh,
album.
okay. I don't know.
Yeah.
I never put that two and two together right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and well, the Doors music has never like struck me as like as overtly political as like some other bands, but it was very much treated as such by its detractors like Jackie Gleason and Richard Nixon. What about your yeah? Well, what about your music? Cause people to react such violently, so violently towards it.
Well, those people you cited were kind of, how should I say, conservative, reactionary types.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, homophobic Anita Bryant and womanizing Jackie Gleason. What can I say? Sorry we got under their feathers, but it made them think anyway.
Yeah, yeah. I wonder what else. I'm really curious what else Richard Nixon thought about the Doors. Like, just that would be interesting to hear from his tapes.
Oh, I'm sure he hated us.
Yeah. Well, besides taking Richard Nixon off, what's your favorite memory of the band?
My favorite memory of the band?
Mm-hmm. Like an event.
Many moments. I'd say the most exciting time was the transition from clubs into concerts. I mean, the giant concerts were fun, but the transition told us that we were actually going to make a living at playing music, which is a real blessing.
I see. Yeah, and are you? You mentioned that you were trying to work with Robbie Krieger to do a new concert in Ray Manzarek's memory. So, but are you planning on writing any more books or any other new musical projects in the near future?
Yeah, I think I'll write more books and I'll play more music, but I don't know what form. I kind of have some books in my head, but like when I got to jam with Eddie Vedder or Carlos Santana.
Okay.
Opportunities like that come up, I'll take them. They're great musicians.
Yeah. It's called. Well, I would say you're in a very privileged place to play with such talented musicians, and for them to want to play with you too,
Cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Well, what's it called? We're almost out of time, but I want to close off with this question, and there's 2 points to it. What do you think of the current state of music, and which political issues do you think are the most important?
Oh my goodness. I don't really know what's going on in music. I mean, there's some good stuff. The 60s was a renaissance, and hopefully there's going to be more renaissance. Politically, it worries me that we haven't learned the lessons of Vietnam very much. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been in Iraq or Afghanistan. And we did learn, the government learned not to put any body counts on television because that discourages the people. Stopped the Vietnam War. They just saw this horror every night on television and were outraged. And so, I don't know. It's idealistic, but I'm down with John Lennon. Let's give peace a chance.
Yeah, it's very poignant that you mentioned that right now because I think it was just yesterday that President Obama announced that we're staying in Afghanistan until 2016. He's like, oh yeah, we end combat missions this year, but we have 10,000 troops staying until 2016. And then that's when he leaves. So we don't know what the next guy is going to do.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Well, all right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Densmore. It was a short interview, but it was very insightful. So.
And it was really good talking to you.
Yeah. Well, just want to thank you again for coming on and for writing your book and making your music.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Densmore, and have a great day.
Call me John.
Okay. Thank you, John.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.